Hello, this is Miss Schrader. Today you're going to be watching a short wee video on King Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. So he's one of the great pharaohs of Egypt. My students, you're going to be taking some notes, so you want a piece of paper and a pencil. And after you've taken your notes, I want you to write me 5 sentences about what you've learned about Ramses II. Whatever you find interesting, important, educational. You want to have a strong introductory statement. King Ramses II was important in Egypt because, and then you would tell me. All right, let's get started. Now, here are some basic facts about Ramses. One of the main things you need to notice is that he ruled for 65 years. It is assumed that he was about 90 years old when he died. In ancient Egypt, if you lived to be 90 years old, well, nobody else would still be alive. They would really think you were a god, and with good reason. And so he's the pharaoh for all those years. And when he died, I'll bet they were really, really scared. It also lets you know that, hey, he had a lot of time in which to get a lot of things done. Now, to be a great pharaoh, you had to be a great warlord, and Ramses was. He's most famous for the Battle of Kadesh, which is shown here. It was in 1274 BCE, and it was one of the first times that they used chariots while fighting. Now, you see he's standing in his chariot, and he's shooting his bow and arrow. It wouldn't have actually been done that way. He'd have actually had a driver, so there would have been 2 people in the chariot, the driver to drive the chariot and himself to shoot the arrow, but he looks more majestic this way. The map on the right shows you how large Egypt had gotten during the time of Ramses. You can see that he controls not only all of Egypt, but up into Southeast Asia, the area that is Israel, and on up into the area that today is Turkey. Egypt was never as large as this ever again. This is Ramses. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is the mortuary temple of Ramses, built near Thebes in Upper Egypt. And hopefully remember that Upper Egypt is actually the southern part of the Nile. This was built as a temple for him around 1264 BCE. The purpose behind this temple is not to hold his body, but to give a place for people to worship. And you can see that it has fallen into something of a state of collapse. They have had a lot of archaeological work done there. And this is the more famous temple of Abu Simbel, which is near the Nile. In fact, when the High Nasser Dam was built in 1968, it became obvious that Abu Simbel was going to be flooded because of the lake that was going to be built there. So they actually very carefully moved all the pieces of this temple to another location so that it would be saved. It is a UNESCO site, a universal site considered to be of cultural importance to the world. Ramses did rule so long, over 60 years, that his people did come to assume that he was a god. He's shown here in this picture being flanked by other gods. So his status as a pharaoh had become so extreme that, yes, it was assumed that he would never die. Many people think that Ramses is the pharaoh of the Exodus story from the Bible, with Moses and the Israelites leaving Egypt. It is shown here in a film version in which Ramses and Moses obviously are quarreling about the subject. Historians are uncertain about this. Some historians have put forward another pharaoh as the pharaoh of this time period. We don't know that for certain, but it is something that a lot of people choose to believe. When Ramses died in 1213 BCE, he was buried in the Valley of the Kings. But by this point, royal priests had become aware that within a very short time after burial, normally the tombs are robbed by tomb robbers, and everything is stolen, including the mummy. So within a very short amount of time, his body was moved to another place to hide it, and then later to still another place, a tomb that is today called TT 320, which you see here in this picture, and is known as the Tomb of the Royal Cache, because basically they started hiding the mummies of a variety of different pharaohs there. In the 19th century, this tomb was discovered, and all of the mummies were brought out, including the mummy of Ramses II. And here is the mummy of Ramses II. It is open to be viewed at the Cairo Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt. He's incredibly realistic looking. One of the things most people point out is that he's got this bend in his nose. That can be natural. It could also be because he was a warrior. His nose may have been broken at some point. And for this picture, we pulled out a little bit so you can see more of him. The crossing of the arms like that was considered the pose for a king, and other people wouldn't have been allowed to have their arms crossed that way. Similarly, a queen would have had her arms crossed differently. I think only one arm would be allowed to cross over her body. In 1995, a very unique tomb was rediscovered in the Valley of the Kings. It's called KV5, Kings Valley 5. This is the tomb of some of Ramses II's children. Because Ramses was pharaoh, he had a lot of wives at the same time, and he produced a huge number of children. It is believed that he may have had as many as 100 children and at least 50 sons, many of whom died before him. And so he built a special tomb for his deceased sons, and that tomb is KV5. KV5 is the largest known tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And as compared with most tombs where you go down a staircase, you go into the tomb, there are 3 or 4 rooms, and you're done, this one has been described as going down and out, rather like a spider web. It's incredibly large, and you can see it from this diagram here. KV5 is so large, it is still in the process of being explored. They didn't find a lot of decoration, fancy decoration. They didn't find a lot of expensive jewelry and treasure and things like that. What you're seeing here is one of the most decorative pieces in it. Its main point is that it is huge, and it was built for the tombs of the many children of Ramses II. Ramses II was such an amazing self-promoter. If you go and see some of the sites in Egypt, frequently if you're asking who the pharaoh who's being shown is, they are going to say that it is Ramses. And he is frequently shown as being very, very large, larger than any of the other statues that are around. So you can show that he is supposed to be a god. All right, so we have been talking about Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. My students, you are going to be giving me 5 sentences about what you have learned, what you found interesting, educational from this. You want to start with a strong introductory statement. Ramses II is important because, and then you're going to tell me why. Okay, thank you.